Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our newest episode of Shots of Legends. Today, we bring you this very special guest, this brilliant woman, Chloe, who's going to tell us about her career as an actress, model, and a creative director. So stay tuned and don't forget to follow us on our social media. Hello,
Hello,
Chloe.
how are you today?
I am doing okay. What about you?
Pretty good. Thank you for asking.
No, it's a pleasure to have you here on Shots of Legends.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we saw your profile and we got a we saw like it will be interesting to be able to talk to you and know a little bit more about your career, about your path, and what you're willing to achieve in the next couple of years.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I'm still sort of getting started on things. I've really only been on this creative journey for about a year. So
Okay,
I'm still learning and networking. And so you having me on the show, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
now it's the pleasure is ours. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Chloe? Tell us about your passion, etc.
Yes. So I've always really enjoyed just cinema and art in general. Oil paintings. I love oil paintings. I love getting to, when there's always like an exhibit in town, I love to go see them. Even when I was younger and unable to sort of recognize what I liked about certain things, I really liked getting lost in fiction.
Mm,
And I think art, even when it is fiction, as they say, it still always contains something that's very true to the artist itself. Like there's always something realistic about whatever the artist is trying to put out.
mm,
And I've always loved things like that. So as an adult, and I wasn't really allowed to explore a lot of that growing up. So as an adult, I sort of unintentionally sort of delved into it. A lot of it's been more obviously consuming art,
mm,
so going to galleries, reading books, watching movies, seeing plays. I used to be very active in the theater community. So I
mm.
used to do quite a few plays. I did some Tennessee Williams stuff, which was fun and exhausting, but I got to sort of learn how to push my limits, how to cry, on cue with certain lines, things like that. That was really interesting. And I sort of fell out of it because just there's a lot of drama behind the scenes, especially in artistic communities and
Yeah.
especially in the theater community that I was a part of. It ended up getting to where there was just so much constant drama that, people would come to me and be like, "Did you hear what like so and so said about you?" And I'd say, "I don't care. I just want to do this play." And then they'd be like, "Well, let me tell you anyway." And I'm like, "No, no, no. Let's just like chill. Let's be friends. Let's be professionals." So yeah, it ended up being exhausting. So I dropped out for a while just because of that. And I
Mm,
focused mostly on school. I wanted to be a play therapist for a long time. And
mm.
so I got my bachelor's with a focus in child psychology.
Wow,
And I
that's
was
great.
applying for, yeah, thank you. I learned a lot. And I will say I want to learn everything I could learn in the master's program.
Mm,
But while I was in the application process of that, I realized I was very burnt out on school and I wanted to learn more than I felt that I was learning. I learned a decent amount, but college has so much busy work as well that I felt like I was getting exhausted by things that I wasn't really getting to learn and experience as much as, taking pop quizzes.
yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah. And so I realized as I was applying for my master's and I'd started to get to do some more creative stuff during lockdown, during COVID. I'd started
Mm,
a Star Wars podcast with a friend. I got to do some voice acting. And based on that, I started crying and I was like, this is so much more fulfilling for me. Like, I love everything that I'm learning,
mm.
but I think I need to start a more creative path. And so that's how things sort of began for me, within the last couple years.
No, that's great. That's great. So we have like three chapters to add to this chat. I know you're a creative director, you're a model, you're actress, but looking to this first chapter, this chapter, I mean, what does it mean to be an actress? And what are the challenges? What are the goals? What are you willing to achieve in the next couple years? I mean, how do you see yourself 5 years from now as an actress?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So for the time being, I'm working on my first short film ever. So I've never done film or cinema. I've only done stage.
Okay.
And yes, so that's a learning experience. I'm recognizing going into it that I'm very green on that. It's something that I have to experience and learn. And my biggest thing is always that I don't want the character on screen that I portray to be about me. I want it to be the character. I want the actress that I come across is that I make the audience believe who I'm trying to portray, whoever that is. So at this point, again, that's a learning experience. We haven't started filming yet. I'm still getting like all the set design and all of that together. So I'm excited about that. But stage acting, I'm very comfortable with. I've never walked into an audition nervous. It's always just exciting for me. So I'm hoping film might be similar, even though it's a little more stressful because I'm also sort of the director of the short film that I'm doing as well. So there's a lot that I'm trying to learn and manage. And I've been talking to a lot of creatives who have been so nice to give me some advice on, especially as a first time trying to do all of that. So I suppose 5 years from now, I just in general, I want to have obviously grown as a creative in some form. I'm still not sure as an actress where exactly that will go.
Okay.
But just as a creative in general, I want to keep networking and keep growing. And I'm really looking into things like gallery work as a model and as a creative director, and work with photographers who would want to work with me on that. So I think that that would be really exciting.
Yeah, no, that's great. The other day I was watching James McAvoy in a theater, and it's interesting to realize the difference between the films, the movies, and the plays that you find there in theater. Is there someone who inspires you the most, the one you follow his step or her steps in this world of cinema or this world of theater?
Ooh, that's another good question. Thank you. I will say, as far as filmmaking, Ari Aster is probably my favorite filmmaker of all time. Stanley Kubrick is obviously phenomenal. Spielberg, especially in his 80s, 90s, when he was
Yeah.
really like incredible. Not that he is still creative, but like in
In his
his that
prime, in his
yes,
prime.
I guess prime. Yes, fascinating. I really admire Ari Aster though because he's only made 3 films. He's made some short films, and I saw his first short film he ever made as well. And everything that he sets out to achieve, I feel like he does it.
Mm.
And the amount of thought that goes into every single scene. So in Hereditary, his first feature-length film, the more I watch it, every time I watch it, I notice something new. It's similar to The Shining in that way for me. Every time I watch The Shining, I notice something, even if it's very minimal, something new. And so it's always a very rewarding experience. For Hereditary, it was not until later viewings, and there was actually a video essay that a gentleman who was also studying film made. It's on YouTube. I completely forget the name, but if you look into it, I'm sure you can
Yeah.
find it. But he actually pointed something out because obviously the house in Hereditary is very uncomfortable. There's something very off about it. And he actually pointed out that it's similar to the Shining's hotel, where the interior does not match the exterior of the house. So it adds that extra level of a supernatural element of something isn't right here, but I can't quite put my finger on it. And I love things like that, that a first time filmmaker has all of these ideas and he's able to express those to create that. So that's something that I'm taking into account. And that's something I take into account too, even when I do a photo shoot and it feels very minimalistic. I'm very picky about how things look. I only post things that I'm incredibly proud of, that I'm like, this is a great shot for whatever reason. And I like to explain the reasons of why I think this is a good shot. So definitely just the details are really important to me. And then obviously the emotion is important. When I pose for a camera, no matter who it is, I want my personality to shine through. Obviously, if someone hires me for something specific, I'm like, of course, like tell me more what you need. I want to meet you wherever it is that you're asking me to meet you. But I also want to make sure that like myself as a model is coming through for them as well. So any personality, any of those like extra details that I can provide, that's really important to me.
So how serious do you take your job? And can you tell us about the process of embodying a character? Because I know that it's difficult somehow to live someone else's life. So how is this process of living someone else's life when you go to when you're acting, when you're on set?
Yeah, you ask good questions. I like, thank you. I will say I haven't played many roles that I cannot relate to in some form of myself, where I can take something from my own life and put that into it. There have definitely been a couple roles when I did Much Ado About Nothing, and then the last Tennessee Williams play that I did, there were two characters that I did not relate to at all. And the one in Much Ado About Nothing was thankfully minimalistic, so I didn't have to overthink it. But the Tennessee Williams one was more difficult because it was only me and then one other gentleman on stage, Tom. And then we had a couple side characters come in towards the end. But that was more difficult because I had to figure out, um, that's a good question. I'm like, what is the wording that I'm looking for? Definitely creating that character that I did not fully relate to, that I wanted to still do her justice. She is a very flawed character, which is part of something that Tennessee Williams does beautifully, is that all of his characters are always gray. You're not dealing with black and whites. Everything is always very layered and complex. So creating her was interesting. And I find, especially in roles that are more emotionally demanding, that music is a really big thing. I will unintentionally find a song that really represents the character for me, and I will listen to that on the way to rehearsal, on the way to perform, and that really helps me get into that mental state of the character. So sometimes, especially in the Tennessee Williams type plays, I would get off off work, I guess, and go home, and it would take me a while to sort of recover from the performance, because I don't disagree with the idea of suffering for your art, but I don't personally believe that it should take over your mental health, that you should have to have a week to recover after a performance. So it was also a good sort of personal boundary learning experience for me of, okay, I can put myself out there, but I need to have a personal boundary of how much I'm willing to do, because I felt like I could still meet the character for what she needed and what the whole play needed without absolutely exhausting myself and like mentally draining myself to do a scene that I could technically do the same way, but without trying to make myself feel as devastated inside to get the emotion across, if that makes sense.
No, I love your passion. I love the way you it's like you're very insightful. I like your excitement, and it's interesting to be having this chat with you. So how do you access the role of women in the film industry? If you analyze the if you go to the past and you see how things are being done today, do you think is there something lacking? Do we have something we could do better so we can use this word to empower women in the context of the film industry? Do you think is there something that is lacking in the film industry when you see, or when you analyze the role of women in this whole process?
Yeah, I will say, and this has definitely again gotten better. I think a really good example is Jenny Ortega when she did Wednesday. It came out later, and I think it was her in an interview that said, she'd get on set and she'd be like, this is actually not what Wednesday would say or do. She would do this. So she was very in touch with her character and what she believed was correct. And thankfully, the cast crew director seemed to listen to her, and they were like, cool, let's work with that. But I remember when that came out, that there was some people that were angry. They were like, how dare you try to put your interpretation of somebody, like, you've been hired for this job. It's only your job to follow that through. And I compared that to when Henry Cavill got the role of Geralt in The Witcher. He knows everything about The Witcher. He probably knows more about The Witcher than the people that wrote The Witcher, possibly. I don't know any of the people. But he'd get on set and say, this is what we should do instead. And they're like, cool, let's do that. And the way that just the media in general took him taking control of the story and the character versus Jenny Ortega, the reaction was different. I never once heard, how dare Henry Cavill put in like his spin on this, versus her. She's like, she's a young girl, how dare she? Even though these are obviously two people that have a very deep connection to their characters and want to do them justice. So I think it's just more like that. And I've gotten backlash as a model with that. And even in one of the shows that I did in the past, I don't feel like I'm ever pushy about it, but I will say, I don't like the way this is going. Can we consider going this way? And I'm very nice about it, because obviously as a woman, I need to be polite. If I'm like, I dislike the way this is going, I dislike the way that you were speaking to me, I'm being a bad person, I'm being unprofessional. Versus if a guy says it, they're like, absolutely, let's pay attention, let's work with you. And I'm not saying that's how it is every time, obviously. And thankfully, I've met a lot of creatives and I've worked with a lot of directors who have been completely open-minded, and they, as long as you see the gender that you're working with as an equal, it doesn't seem to be an issue.
Yeah.
Obviously, if someone has an issue with what is being suggested in general, that's fine. But yeah, I would say just having, when someone, especially if they're in a lead role of some sort or they are a model on set, if they have something to suggest and you really like the way that they're thinking, especially, I think that's important to listen to them and to not get, because when I make a suggestion, I'm never trying to insult someone. I'm not trying to say you don't know what you're doing, or I think that you don't have a good creative mind. And I think a lot of people, because creatives can be very insecure. I have major insecurities in my own right, in certain areas. So I think a lot of times when someone makes what is just a, very soft, critical sort of suggestion, that people hear it as you hate me, you hate my ideas. And that's not what I'm trying to say. And I don't feel like that's what other people are trying to say. But instead, when they speak, it's like, this is how I think this would be better. And again, especially as a woman, I think what's the show that just hit HBO Max, The Idol, where it was written intentionally to try and portray, and I think it was supposed to be satirical anyway, but it was supposed to portray the like horrible things that women especially in the music industry have to go through in order to be seen as successful or become successful. And then once, I think it was The Weeknd that took over. I'm not sure about all of it, but apparently once The Weeknd took over, he was like, this is told too much from a female perspective. And the original writers were like, well, that's the point. And then he's like, no, 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 no. And now it's become almost a joke where Lily Rose Depp's character is seen as problematic. She does a take on a music video, she watches it back and she's like, we have to change all of this. The lighting's bad. This needs to be tighter. And technically that's her watching out for herself and her career and wanting to make better art. And the show perceives her as being, she's problematic. She's having a breakdown. She's, she's doing drugs or something.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I guess it's kind of more like that. Whereas if it was shown as a man, if The Weeknd saw and he's like, no, this sucks, we got to do it again, they'd be like, oh, he's such an artist. So it definitely is. It's a weird sort of balancing act a lot of the time. And again, it definitely does depend on who you are working with. As I said, I've worked with many people who we see each other as equals, or I will say, hey, I'm really green. I need, help. I need advice. But they still see me as an equal. And so they're like, yes. And then we work together as equals and we both end up making something that we're really proud of. And I think that's important.
So one question, Chloe, are you ready to deal with fame? And what is the weight of that? When you see, because it's clear that this is the path. Very soon you'll be in the being followed with paparazzi, etc. Are you ready for this?
I've actually had some people tell me, they're like, the idea of fame, and I know this is based on personal belief as well, where they're like, if you want to be famous, you have to give that aura, that energy of I'm ready to be famous. So you asking that is really interesting. I will say the idea of fame terrifies me. The idea of being successful and being famous feels like two different things, because success is what each person individually defines it as. If I never become famous, but I become well known in the circles that I want to become a part of, and I'm successful in that, I have a community that respects me and I get work, I work with people, we are creating things that we are proud of, and I can make money from it, which I know is incredibly difficult in the artistic industry in general. Yeah. That would be my definition of success. I don't want, I would love to maybe hit an influencer status where maybe I can get some really cool, like, oh, I get free clothes and I can wear them for you. And I get gigs where I can actually model clothing for companies. I would love that. That would make me feel so good. And that would make me feel, like people appreciate me as a model and as a creative too. But the idea of extreme fame terrifies me because the internet is very cruel. And I know that if I made something that ended up being horrible, it wouldn't just be like, oh, well, that was a one-time thing. It's an immediate joke. And I get that. And I've definitely fallen into that as a consumer, especially when it comes to certain films where I'll be like, how did this get made? Yeah. How was nobody on set like, can we change the script? Like, this is too much metaphor and too little story. Like, where are we going with this? Yeah. So I get it to a degree. But I also don't like making fun of individuals. I think as a project can be easier to critique or even make fun of But when you go for an individual, I think that's really harsh, unless they've done something to deserve being critical of, like, like Ezra Miller's stuff.
Yeah.
He's done terrible things to people. So then I think you can be like, okay, this is how I feel about this person. But if it's just a performance you don't like, I don't think it's kind to make fun of people for that. People
Yeah.
only have so much control. And especially if an actor and maybe a director have different ideas of where a character can go, the performance is not going to be as strong just because the differences are there. So I don't ever want to be fully famous. I don't want to ever hit like Kardashian levels of fame. I don't think I will anyway, and that's okay. I don't know what I would do with that level of fame. I would still like to be able to go to the grocery store when I want to and walk around a bookstore and not be bothered. So I hope that answers your question, where I want to be successful, not necessarily famous. And I want to get to do projects and keep building my network and just getting to meet people and do different things. I want to learn to do as many different things as I can. I think it's fascinating to learn new roles and new abilities.
Yeah.
So
No, that's great. So being a model, what are the challenges? I know that being a model, you have a certain kind of duties, of limits, things you must actually avoid. Like you need to control your nutrition, your care, things you must not eat, etc. How is to be? What does it mean to be a model, and what is if you analyze the things that you have to avoid to become this professional willing to be, do you think that you're going to the right direction, or there is still a lot to do so you can achieve that high amount and that goal you're willing to achieve?
yeah, so I will say, just in general, modeling is one of the most difficult industries
Yeah.
because there are many people that can be good models, but agencies might not want to hire them for whatever reason. I myself am technically, unless there's a random agency that sees this and they're like, let's do a test shoot or something, I'm technically too old to be signed to an agency. They are looking for 17 to like 19-year-olds because they want to hire someone young, and then they want to work for them for a few years, and then they not always get replaced, but that's just the constant thing.
Mm.
Advertisers want very young people. So it's,
That's bad,
I would
isn't
say,
it?
to a degree, something I regret that I never got to experience trying to actually model or get an agency when I would have been the right age for that. But there's also part of me that, when, especially when I have photographers or people trying to take advantage of me, that I know, and I'm not saying this covers everyone, but me personally, I know as a 19-year-old, I would have been intimidated. I would have felt pressured to go through whatever that they wanted. Versus now, I had a bad shoot, I don't remember, a few months back, and I left mid shoot. I was like, hey, I've answered this over and over. You need to stop telling me to take off my clothes. Like, we texted about this before. There was going to be no nudity in this shoot.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't stop asking. So I was like, you know what? I'm good. I'm done. And I left. And I know 19-year-old me would have been too intimidated to do that. I would have been terrified. I'd be like, oh my God, he's going to be mad at me. He's going to tell people about me. And that doesn't bother me now. So, there's pros and cons to it, I suppose. I do think something that is a little stressful for me is, so I think Kim Kardashian has been a genius the way her whole career has gone. Like, she's still going strong. It's been over a decade, and
Yeah.
she's getting to model for companies that I would die. Like, you're getting to walk like a Dolce & Gabbana runway. That is incredible. And I believe she's in her 40s. And I understand that for me, I would not get that job. It's
Mm.
because it's not that, I would like a chance to be able to audition and see if I could pull that off. But it's that so many companies, even for models now, they want already established celebrities. And I get why. It's easier to sell your brand when you have a recognizable name. But I think that almost makes it more difficult for a lot of models nowadays because they're suddenly competing with people who are already established, and especially in the era of TikTok and Instagram, where people become famous seemingly overnight,
Yeah.
and suddenly everyone just wants to work with them. They're the new big thing.
Yeah.
So it seems to be just a little bit more difficult in that aspect. I will say, as far as eating, it's not mild trigger warning. There's like an eating disorder I'm about to talk about. If anyone, just like skip 30 seconds ahead, I'll make it quick. I used to weigh a lot more than I do now, and I lost 55 pounds actually over COVID. So during that time, I unintentionally developed an eating disorder because I was so strict with my calories that when I was like, oh, I've actually gone more than the amount that I was expecting to lose, I should probably start eating more. That was so hard for me. I had to talk to my therapist about, is it okay if I eat this amount of fat every day? And she's like, yes, you need to. You know, you've started becoming a marathon runner. You're running 13 miles. You need food, right?
Mhm.
So I will say that that anxiety is still there. And I don't consider it a bad thing personally, but the day that I have a photo shoot, I will not eat before a shoot, or I will eat very minimalistic. If I know it's not until 6 p.m., I will live on caffeine and like crackers until after the shoot. And then after the shoot, I'm starving. But my anxiety is sort of like, I need to look my best. You know, if I eat, I don't bloat, but my abs are not going to be as visible, right? So
Yeah.
I just take all of that into account. So there is definitely an anxiety there. That's one of the reasons why when people, if someone does hire me and they say, do you have a time preference? I say morning. Morning's great because then I can shoot, then I can just breathe the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So, and even then, you know, it is definitely, as I said earlier, I am picky about the content that gets put out about me. So, you know, even if we have a good shoot and I don't feel attractive, whenever I'm paid, I never expect photos back. I'm being hired
Yeah.
for a job. If the photographer wants to send me photos and says, please post these, I'm always very appreciative. But when I'm hired for a job, I do not expect them back. And also, when I am paid, I don't really have control over what gets put out about me, you know, the photo.
Yeah.
So it definitely that can add to the stress because seeing a bad photo can make my body dysmorphia a little bit worse. Whereas it's not so much that I look like that, it's just the angle's weird or the shadowing's weird.
Mhm.
And that there's a lot that comes into play with that. And I never have my stomach sucked in or any of that in my photos because I want to look natural. And I
Yeah.
also don't want to add in this idea of like, you know, and I angles are angles, sucking and stomach is normal. I'm not against that.
Mhm.
But it definitely feeds into my personal body dysmorphia when I go online and I see photos of people that look way skinnier than they actually are. And that will get in my head because then I'm like, well, how do they get that skinny? Like,
Yeah.
how do I achieve that? And that might not just be natural for me is with my genetics and my just how my body works, but also, you know, I also have to recognize they are posing for the photo.
Mhm.
So there's definitely, yeah, and I've met girls that are tiny, 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 and then they've auditioned for just a role, and they're like, "Yeah, I was told I need to lose 12 pounds," and I'm like, "If you lose 12 pounds, you're going to be underweight." And
Yeah.
they're like, "I want this role." I'm like, "I get it, I hear you, but it's rough." So I think again, just learning how to have healthy personal boundaries with yourself, and
Yeah.
I guess balancing like when you feel like potentially not harming yourself, but putting yourself into a stressful calorie deficit or something situation might be worth it for a time versus when you're like, no, I have my personal, you know, bodily care and mental health is way more important than
Mhm.
doing this thing.
Can,
So it's
can,
just, I think it
can,
just depends on the.
yeah, yeah. Can we focus on the brands you would love to represent one day? And can you tell us why? Because I'm just thinking about Dior, about Chanel, about the Prada, etc. And how would you feel if you were in Paris right now? Because we saw what Pharrell is doing there. So how would you feel if you were there, like representing these very known brands? Can you tell about this dream, this desire? The expectation of being part of this whole industry and the being seen by a lot of people in that kind of platform where you should be there maybe and we hope to see you there very shortly. Can you tell us a little bit about this chapter of your life?
I love you manifesting this for me. I appreciate this. um, Yeah, no, I think I would just cry the whole time. I would be like, can we rehearse this like 20 times? Because I'm just gonna start sobbing. I can't believe that is happening. So yeah, I cannot. Ooh, you know what? I will imagine it. That would be incredible. That'd be amazing. I would just live fully in that moment for as long as it lasted. Prada and Chanel are probably my two favorites. I love Versace too because I love color. I love pop. But
Yeah.
there's something so classic about Chanel. It's always just so classy and so elegant, and it's stunning. God, if I was there, that would be insane. I don't even know how to reply to that. I'm like, I I try to be realistic in what I can and cannot do as a model, as far as my, again, my age and my fame status. I also have tattoos that are potential copyright issues. Like I have Disney tattoos, and I wouldn't want, I'm sure there are companies that be like, we don't want to put that out there because then Disney's going to be like, we didn't give you permission for that. I mean, I can cover it up with makeup, or I could just wear long
Yeah,
sleeves, and that's fine.
yeah,
But I get that, again, having those, it already adds a little bit more of a limit. But you know what? If I could meet people that are like, we want to work with you and would be willing to work with that, that'd be insane. I'm having a hard time still answering that because I'm like, that would be so cool. That's all that I could say. That would be so cool. I would live in that moment so strongly. And oh my God, it just, that would feel so good. That would feel so good to feel that I was trusted enough by people that have those huge companies to represent them, even if it's just for a moment.
no,
That'd be amazing.
I know that very soon we will be in the first line waiting to get your autograph.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. So
I'll start working on it.
I know I know that you've been covered for a lot of I mean different magazines. So what does this represent to you as an artist? And when you see your face in certain magazine, and what does it represent in terms of what are you willing to achieve? And when you analyze where you're coming from and the way you're going, the challenges, the dreams, etc. What do these covers represent to you? What do these magazines represent to you as an artist?
Yeah, so most of the magazines I have been published in, they are magazines where you actually send in photo sets. You sort of send these in and say, would you be interested in these? There have been 2 magazines that have actually reached out to me specifically and said, we would like to interview you. We would like you to send in photos that you're really proud of. And obviously, anytime someone recognizes anything that I've sent in and appreciates it, that makes me feel amazing. I remember the first cover I ever got, and I was just so elated. I was like, someone wants me on a cover of their magazine. Like, wow, so cool. So, yeah, but the ones I'd say that definitely mean the most to me are the people who just randomly reached out and especially said, we want to hear your voice. Any form of interview, I take very seriously. And I have a hard time with self-worth a lot of the time, where I'm like, why would you want to hear what I have to say versus somebody else? So like when you reached out and then I was looking through your podcast, I listened to some of them and I was like, these people have done so much with their life. Like they've won awards, they've been out there, they've been grinding, and I'm still so new to it all. So I almost want to be like, are you sure? Like I'm still learning, but I really, really appreciate it, like truly. So, yeah, I don't, can you repeat the question? My ADHD train
No,
is
no,
like,
I was asking about the meaning of being part of these whole magazines. And
the
what does
whole,
it
yes.
represent to you as an artist?
Yeah. I it means a lot that someone would consider anything that I have to do and say as something that is important enough to put out into the world and to actually advertise and encourage, say, hey, please read this article. And I've met a lot of actually quite a few people. My Voyage Dallas article that came out few weeks back, I've had a lot of people reach out that I've never spoken to before and just say, thank you for sharing that. I would like to work with you. I'd like to talk with you. And that means a lot. It's also that when I do have a chance to speak, I really want it to mean something. And so, anytime I can talk about something that someone else might relate to or feel encouraged, feel like they're not alone in the same process, that's really important to me too. I want to use my time as wisely as possible. So yeah, it's just, I feel really, really honored when someone wants to hear what I have to say. I always love when people want to see me,
Yeah.
to take my photo and create something with me, but hearing what I have to say feels like a whole other level. So I always really appreciate when someone wants to speak with me.
No, we wish you all the best. We hope to see you in the higher level the next few days, and we'll be there clapping our hands because we will surely be happy to see you succeeding and achieving the goals you have set.
Well, thank you. Can I actually ask you like how you started like your personal journey? Like you have this podcast, you get to interview amazing people. Like what inspired you to do that? I'd love to know.
Well, I think it's interesting to be able to tell stories, and because telling the stories opportunity to inspire young people all over the world. So I use this podcast as a way to somehow enlighten some people's mind and make them realize that it's possible to achieve what they're willing to achieve if we keep punching and keep dreaming above all.
I love that. I love that so much. And that's so important because there's so much criticism out in the world that a lot of times people forget to just say, hey, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And that's so important. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for creating that for people.
Yeah. So before we finish, if you had to, if you had to leave a certain motivation sentence, I mean motivation word, what would you say to these young people all over the world? If you had to leave a sentence, a motivational sentence,
yeah,
what would you say to those people who are afraid to follow their dreams?
right. I would say don't be afraid to be laughed at. That was a big thing of mine, was especially growing up, I had a really bad stutter. I really couldn't speak. And the first time I ever auditioned for a play, I was so anxious that I actually stuttered when they were like, hey, what's your name? Thankfully, the director could tell I was anxious and he brushed it off like, oh, you're so nervous, like you're having a hard time speaking. It's okay. And he was really understanding about it. And I was really thankful for that. But I was so scared that I was going to get up there and look stupid. And then people were going to be like, oh my God, that was so annoying. Just don't be afraid to just go out and try. And I know that sounds cliche, but you have no idea what you can accomplish until you try it. And if you try something and it doesn't work, only use that as an opportunity, not to beat yourself down and feel dumb, but to be like, cool, that didn't work. Now I know how to do it better next time. Every single thing that I do, I strive for perfection, but then everything I do, I'm like, ooh, this is what I can do better next time. And then I try to just bring that in and just constantly learn and grow. And understand, I don't think any of us will ever personally reach like peak perfection in our minds of this is the best, this is just perfect, but just strive for that and just be kind to yourself during that process, because the process looks different for everyone. And God knows people are out there winning Oscars and then probably going home and being like, I could have still done this scene better. And that's okay. Just be kind to yourself during the process and just try, just start somewhere, even if it's small, even if you don't get a lot of social media attention for it. You're still doing something. You doing it is still more than what 99% of other people are doing because they're scared to try. And I was in that latter group for a long time. So, just try. And there will be someone out there that supports you and believes in you.
No, thank you, Claire.
Like
It was a pleasure to have you on Chat with Legend. I hope to have you in the next opportunity and wish you all the best in your career.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really, really appreciate you too, Sergio.
No, it was a pleasure. Have a great day. See you in the next opportunities.
Sounds perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Bye. Yeah. Just wow. What amazing chat we had today with Chloe, who told us about her career, her goals, challenges, the brand she's willing or dreaming to represent one day. So it was amazing to be able to know a little bit more about her life and this whole process of embodying a character. So thank you, Chloe, for granting us these opportunities. It was a pleasure to have you there. We hope to see you in the next episodes of Chats of Legend. Don't forget to follow us on our social media.